myself talk about the rationale. Let's start with a really short sitting chair. Line up everybody, face each other. So look at 1 row just in the back. So we're about maybe 6 feet from each other, and then this row directly across. Okay. Let's line up right about here. If you could, let's do our best so that every person has kind of cross. And come down a little bit, maybe towards this end. Okay, good. Can you come down just a little bit? Oh, can you come maybe just a couple feet this direction? Can we have you? Yeah, let's say everyone about 6 feet apart. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's good enough. Okay. I'm going to give some very simple instructions. We're just going to do this meditation for 5 minutes. So as best as possible, I'd like you to have your torso so that you're sitting, if you can do this, directly over the center of your pelvis. So not as best as possible, not leaning back, and yet not over like this. Nobody's doing this, but just directly over the center of the pelvis. Your feet about shoulders width. You can just have your hands resting right here on your legs comfortably. Yeah, looks good. Now I'd like you to have your eyes resting gently on a spot about 6 feet in front of you. But don't lock in. Just gently rest on a spot. Now, next instruction is try and have a nice tall torso. But while you're relaxed in this posture, you're also growing tall such that if you pull maybe the top of your hair at the crown of your head, there's almost a sensation in which you are hanging from that point. Now, next instruction is have your shoulders nice and open. You don't want them kind of slouched in as if you are on a computer at the end of the day and you're tired, falling asleep. You want your shoulders to roll open. And one check is if you feel the shoulder blades in your back, you can pull them inwards towards each other and then down just a bit. Let your chest feel nice and open. Next thing is the breath. When you inhale, just allow the breath to drop into your belly. And as you're inhaling, just let everything drop away. If you feel tension in the shoulders, Notice it. Just let it drop. You might ask yourself, when you notice that tension in the shoulders, the neck, or the chest, who's holding that tension? And just let it drop. If you notice a thought or a feeling, you might ask yourself, who's holding that thought? Who's holding that feeling? And just let it drop. Just let it drop into your belly. And this is the most important part. When you exhale, lengthen the exhale. If you can, about twice as long as the inhale. Maybe for you, it's a 5 count. Maybe it's a 10 count. Maybe it's a 20 count. Just lengthen the exhale as if you were stoking a fire. You want to give a nice, steady, smooth stream of air. And at the end of that, the inhale rushes in. And then you move to your exhale. That's it. If a thought comes up, just let it be. Let it drop into the belly. And come back to your exhale. Nice, long, steady exhale. Let's do this for just about 5 minutes. Okay, we'll come back to this practice at the end if we have time. That was really nice. So I'll introduce myself and then start talking about why we did this just now. My name is Geoff Ashton. I'll stand just so you can get a better view of me. My name is Geoff Ashton. I grew up in San Jose, and I'm really nothing. I'm really nothing special. Bob, you mentioned these titles, but these are things you just pick up in time. I grew up in San Jose. I left for college at 18. I did my PhD studies in Chicago and then later at University of Hawaii. And then in the course of my PhD studies, I spent a number of years in Asia, particularly in India, Thailand, a little bit in Japan, studying Indian, the foundations, philosophical foundations of Indian yoga traditions, and also studying Zen Buddhism on the side. There was a temple in the back of this valley on Oahu, where I would go back, and they were actually quite hostile to intellectuals, to be honest. It's kind of an anti-intellectual practice. And I always felt like, I didn't belong with these guys because I was so heady. I was always in my head trying to figure things out and trying to reduce things to concepts that I could then fit and repiece in new and interesting ways. And they didn't care anything about that. What I slowly started to realize is that the practice of these Zen Buddhists was not a contemplative practice. It certainly was not an intellectual practice. You could talk about it in intellectual ways, and they were willing to do that insofar it was useful to their end, but it was just a means to an end. And when I started training in Tai Chi, Bob had made reference to my Tai Chi teacher, I realized not only was it not a contemplative practice, it really was, it was an energy practice. And the work that we were doing was really an inner alchemy, and very similar, many of the principles that you get through Bob's classes and teachings. I've only been now twice to the energy class this morning, and then about 3-4 weeks ago. It's amazing how many of these principles apply across Indian yogic traditions, Chinese Taoist traditions, and various traditions in Japan. And whether that's the result of cultural influence, whether these ideas originated in one place, or whether there are strong parallels because they just make sense in terms of the human body. I'm not sure how useful of answering that question is. What definitely seems to be the case is that these are very useful ways of thinking about the inner workings of the body and how the body mirrors the external world. One of the reasons that Zen was so useful for me was because it got me out of my head and it got me into my body, and in particular parts of my body that had been just living in the dark, in particular my belly. In many ways, the form of Zen practice that I am familiar with, I think this is true of many Zazen meditation practices, but in particular the one that I'm familiar with, is very much centered around the hara, this lower belly. And it's an exercise in understanding the power of gravity. It's an exercise in understanding the power of gravity and using gravity, befriending gravity, so that it can become a very life-giving and life-generating power, a life-generating force. And the more that I've practiced this the more that I've practiced this form of Zazen, and particularly used it alongside Tai Chi, I've realized how much cultural baggage we have around gravity. We have phrases like, you know, don't let it get you down, or I felt sick to my stomach, or the glass is half full, or the glass half empty. Well, if you say the glass is half empty, you're a pessimist about life. Life is half over. Much of our cultural baggage about gravity and dropping and sinking is bound up with a number of other attitudes that we have that we've lost the wisdom of not just gravity, but also the feminine. Yin, for example, in the Chinese tradition, is a feminine force and it's a sinking force, it's a dropping force. In the same way that we've excluded the feminine in Western culture, we've also excluded gravity. And we've also excluded emptiness. The glass is half empty. The glass is half full. It's good to be full, it's bad to be empty. But what we just did is we emptied out the belly through the exhale, and you allowed the force of gravity to be more acutely felt in the body. Is this registering a little bit? Yeah. There's a number of reasons for this. Much of this probably has to do with the Industrial Revolution. You know, we don't have to get our feet dirty anymore in the mud. We don't have to carry things. We don't have to bear the weight of things anymore. We have machines that can do this. But actually, there's incredible power and incredible wisdom in knowing gravity. We've lost much of this. And there's a number of other terms related to gravity that are part of a collection of terms. All comes up from the Latin root gravis, which means to feel heavy, to weigh. Things like grief, or grievance, or gravel. We've got rocks here, right? Gravel, the weight of gravel, the weight of things that are heavy. What are some other ones? Grains. All of these things are related to gravity. These are things that have weight, things that sink. And we have some practices that use this. Theater, for example, the experience of tragedy, where you experience a cathartic cleansing of the emotions. You go to the theater in order to cry, to feel grief. But the difference between feeling grief in the theater and feeling grief in life is that in the theater, you allow it to happen. You allow that sinking to happen. And from that, the softening to happen. There's a cleansing through that. But we resist that in life. Why is that? Why do you think we resist this in life? It's uncomfortable. Yeah. It hurts to look at ourselves. What do you think? Uh-huh. You're afraid it will never stop. Yeah. What do you think? Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. 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 Right. Yeah, very much so. But actually, there's a lot of incredible work that's done when we allow ourselves to grieve. There's a lot of great work to be done when we lift rocks, when we lift gravel. There's a lot of great work to be done when we eat grains. Grains were actually, for a number of years in traditional cultures, are a cathartic in the medical sense. A medical cathartic is something that cleanses the system. Maybe you've ingested a poison. You need to get that poison out. Well, before we had advanced medicine, we had grains. And grains were things that would cleanse your intestinal tract and get the poison out of your system. Why? Because it's a gravity agent. It does the work, it accelerates the work of gravity, and it cleanses you and it heals you. Gravity restores life. But we've lost much of this wisdom because of various cultural biases that we no longer even remember when or where those biases came from. So we'll stand up here in just a moment and we'll do some stuff with the breath and posture. But one of the reasons why Zen in this form of Tai Chi that I practice has been so useful is because it has helped me to get back into my body, and it has helped me to realize that health and vitality are more important than figuring things out. And it's helped me to realize these things with just using my breath and my body. And it's something I'm still working on. So I don't pretend to have any of this figured out. But for me, at least, it's useful. And the last thing I'll say is that everything has weight. And we can use anything that has weight as a kind of cathartic cleansing agent. Physicists tell us that all of the elements on the periodic table, all of these elements have weight. And you might, I could say, well, how much do your feelings and thoughts weigh? And you might say, well, that's a silly question because these things are just in my mind. I can't put them on a scale. But if I ask you, well, what's heavier, grief or joy? What is heavier for you, grief or joy? Hey, absolutely. Or the thought of, death or life. Which of those thoughts is heavier for you? Yeah, death. And these are all things that sink. So thoughts have weight. And maybe the reason they have weight is because these are all things that register in the body. Just as I could pick up a boulder and it has a lot more weight than a feather, because I feel it in the body, because it makes my body sink, so too does grief and death make the body sink a lot more than joy and the thought of life. But actually we can use these things, we can use this weight to heal ourselves and also to grow life, to grow our vitality. But we have to think and feel vitality in life in a much more subtle way, very much in terms of this subtle energy that, that you hear of in Bob's classes, and you also, I'm sure, experience in your own body. So if we could, let's stand up. And I'll stand over here. Yeah, and maybe stand somewhere where you can see me. I'm just going to start with some simple breathing exercises. So what I'd like you to do first is take your hands and interlink the fingers. Put them right below your belly button, a few inches below your belly button here. And we're gonna inhale, and I'd like you to inhale into the belly. I'm sure you all know the difference between chest and belly breathing. So I'd like you to inhale into the belly. We're gonna come up to about here. Let's do that together. A nice, slow, steady inhale. Let's turn the palm down. I'm just gonna slowly exhale, a nice, long, slow, and steady exhale. Let's do one more. Inhale. And then exhale. Let's do one more. Okay. Now, what I'd like you to do is just notice a couple of sensations. First of all, when you inhale, notice where you might be holding tension in your body. Just allow that just to drop away, just to sink away. And all of you have nice posture right now. So just have the confidence. It sounds such a silly thing, but have the confidence that I can just let this tension in my shoulders or around my brow just drop into my belly, and I'm going to be okay. So keep that in mind as you inhale. And now, more importantly, on the exhale, I'm going to try to convey how this form of breathing works. And it's what we call hara breathing. Hara breathing. And I'm wearing a gi and hakama here. And I'm also wearing what's called a hara belt. It's a belt that I've had this thing for about 16 years. It just wraps around. Here's my belly button here, and the top of the belt is here. And it wraps like this. It's a simple piece of cloth that wraps around. And it helps me to be constantly in touch with the sensation of my belly. And what I'm doing is, when I exhale, I'm exhaling down into my belly, such that my belly does not go in, cave in when I exhale. It actually stays out, and the top of my stomach starts to slowly turn in, because I'm pushing down into the pelvic floor and around to the wide base of the belly. And I'm doing this even when I speak. Now you might take, this is something that is actually for many of us not normal. It is normal to inhale into the belly. If you look at how babies inhale and breathe, they breathe into the belly, but oftentimes when they exhale, the belly kind of goes inward. So this is a form of breathing that you have to develop. But some practices do develop this. For example, classical singing. They develop this. And we do this when we cough. So you can take your fingers and you can put it just maybe a couple inches inside of one of your hip bones. And you can just cough. Do you feel the air kind of compress out? You feel that? Now, we do this also when we laugh, like a good belly laugh. Just do that for yourself. Right? You can feel that. The air pushes down. Ha, ha, ha. Yeah? Now, when you exhale, can you exhale and engage those muscles so that the energy goes down into that pelvic area? Just try that on your own. Inhale into the belly and exhale. Try once more. Exhale. Can you feel that engaging on the exhale? Do you feel it engaging a little bit? Okay. Pardon? Pushing it out. Yeah. And where does it feel like it's exiting? Out your mouth. Yeah. Now, of course, the air obviously doesn't exit the belly, right? It exits the mouth. There's a sense in which energetically, my knees tend to go inward. But for me, it's helpful when I exhale, not just to exhale into the pelvic floor, but now down, I push my knees out into the balls of the feet. And I feel much more rooted and grounded. Now you might notice another thing. I'll exaggerate it a little bit, but let me know if you notice anything here. I'm going to inhale. Do you notice anything in the posture? What do you notice? Yeah, that's right. The pelvis, my tailbone sinks down. And this grows tall. There's this weird sinking and lifting at the same time. And little by little, my spine, my back will start to straighten out. All those kinks start to straighten out. It's very much like this Kundalini snake just starting to lengthen. And it's not just a postural thing. It's the exhale. The breath is correcting the posture. So the posture supports the breath. I'm not going to be able to get a nice exhale here. I have to have the basic posture. But then to really lengthen from here, it's the physical labor of exhaling. The hips, the tail tucks, the hips roll. And now you can play with this a little bit. Try exhaling into this lower belly area with your tail out, just to feel the difference. With your butt sticking out, try this exhaling into the belly. Yeah, what do you feel? It doesn't feel right. Yeah, it's not happening. So the base of the pelvis is incredibly active. Neurologically, is that the right, can I speak of it in that way, Bob? Yeah. And what you're doing with the breath is you want to activate that, but you want to go even deeper. You're going into the legs, you're connecting into the ground. But if I'm like this, I'm not going to be able to do it. And I'm going to have two halves of a body. But when I tuck the tail, now I start to get closer. And the more that I practice this long, calm, steady exhalation, I start to realize, as you were noticing, okay, that's not quite right. That's too far. Right about here, there's this channel starting to open up. It's a channel of subtle energy. And the reality of it is undeniable when you start to practice it. But if you don't do it, it's not a reality for you. And then it's not part of the way you think, speak, feel, or move your body. Now, what does that have to do with gravity? Well, let's practice it here. What I'd like you to keep in mind now is that exhalation, that slight tuck in the tail on the exhalation in particular, and think of, you might, for me this is helpful, those French coffee roasters, right? You've got the grains, you've got your earth, you've got your hot water, you press down, and then, is this how, no, I don't use this very much, but how does it work? The French press, yeah, you steadily, now you can't just like that. If you did, you would break it, right? So nice, this is your exhale. This is what we're doing. This is your French press. Sorry, so let's start here. Inhale. And now your French press. Again. Let's do one more. Let's check in. Is that registering, and how does that feel? Does this register at all for you? Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Oh, nice. For you? You felt the lengthening. Yeah. Yeah, very nice. You look nice and tall. Very tall. How about for you?
It was a slow and steady ride, and it felt really grounded.
Uh-huh.
Felt like
Uh-huh. Yeah. There's an interplay here between thinking on the inhalation and then lift. But if you don't allow the sinking to happen, if you don't allow gravity to do its work, let everything drop away, the lift is compromised. There's not so much lift. Now, what we have here, the way I understand it is very much in terms of Taoist alchemy. There's gravity, there's yin energy, sinking, dropping, yielding on the inhalation. Or you could say there's death, there's gravity, there's grief. Just let it drop. Give into it. Now, you're not just a wet noodle though. If we were wet noodles, if we were just yin, this rock, no lift. It's just gravity. But living things have lift. the bushes, the trees have this lift. And it's not you lifting, it's life, it's choiceless. All we're doing is getting out of the way. And we're using the breath to clear away what Taoists would call Da, way. You're making a way by learning gravity, sinking, and then gentle lift. The gross physical body sinks away. Yang, or that which has form, sinks away, disintegrates. So yin prevails on the inhale. On the exhale, then you have yang. But yang rides on yin. Yang is this assertion, things taking form, taking shape. It's the assertion of life. But neither of them should happen independently of the other. Too much yang, life is going to, at some point, just fall apart. There's too much pressure. There needs to be more yin. But too much yin, you sink. You don't hold form. So the yang that's being asserted is on the exhale, but it's this subtle energy coming up through the channel, the subtle column, and pervades the whole body and extends outside of you. You can easily feel it between your hands. Maybe your senses open up. Can I ask the time? What time do we end? Oh, okay. Okay. Did we? Okay. So here's what we'll do with the time we have left, and then we'll do some, leave some time for questions if you like. Let's do just a few more of these. We'll do maybe 5 of these. And then without any verbal exchange, let's come back to our chair. And I'd like us to come back to that same posture, hands on the legs comfortably somewhere, or really however you'd like to put your hands, just let them rest. Eyes resting about 6 feet in front of you. But really focus on the breath. Inhale into the belly. And then when you exhale, the same inhale, exhale we've been doing standing, now take that to your chair, and we'll do that for about 5 or 10 minutes. And then we'll close there. Okay? Let's do this together again. Inhale. Exhale. Okay. Suppose, I'll just say, are there questions or comments? And in particular, did you notice anything different from the first sitting and then this sitting here? Anything at all? Yes. Uh, uh-huh. Very nice. Very nice. Yes. Uh-huh. Good. You got out of the way. Anybody else? What did you notice or notice any differences? Yes.
Notice the places holding on, dropping on the exhalation.
Uh-huh.
And kind of opening in my feet. I can feel the kind of like contacting the earth.
Oh, very nice. But your feet on the floor, on the ground. Great. You know, yes. And more connected. Uh-huh. And enjoyment. Oh, nice. Thank you. Can I ask you? Do you notice anything? Yeah. I know. We didn't need to do anything to make it such a nice day. Can I ask you? Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, and pardon? Compared to the first one? Yeah. This is very much Zen is a Buddhism, but it's only partly a Buddhism in my opinion. This practice is only partly a Buddhism. The goal is to empty your mind of thoughts. But this meditation style, there are so many meditation styles, as almost all of you know, and they're all incredibly effective in their own ways. The strategy here is not to fight the thinking. It's just to move your attention to your belly. You don't resist the thoughts. You don't indulge in the thoughts. The thoughts are just happening, but all kinds of other stuff is happening. Your feet are touching the floor, but we neglect these things. We get stuck up here. We're always trying to fix things and figure things out. This is just so the no thinking. It's not a denial of thinking. It really means mind not stopping on thinking. You're moving the energy, and thinking is energy. Anybody else? Any other? Yeah.
A dropping and an expansion at the same time. This time and an awareness not just of the breath, but also of where it was going.
Uh-huh. Sorry, can everyone hear? No, I just realized this. So she felt a dropping and an expansion of awareness. Is that what you said? Yeah.
And then not just being aware of the breath this time, but of where it was going.
Mm-hmm.
I felt it going down instead of just breathing.
Uh-huh. Yeah, very nice. Oh, there's 10 people online? Okay. Sorry, still figuring out all the technology options here. Anyone else like to share anything? Yes.
I can start to feel like a lengthening exhalation, like you said, from the spine.
You felt a lengthening of the spine.
Something open up right in that area.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. And you're quite on the right track there. And did it feel gentle, or did it feel like you're at your chiropractor and a quick?
It felt gentle.
Yeah.
A little like struggling to figure out
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Nature is very gentle. We see this when we really pay attention to nature and how gentle nature is. And so too are we when we're natural. And there's something about this subtle energy that is much more natural than the rigidity of the I-centered movement. I am driving to the store. I am going to solve this problem. I care about you. I'm going to fix your problem. There's something very gentle and yet intelligent about this subtle energy. The body knows. How do we awaken that subtle body? That's the trick. Much more of a practice issue than it is a theoretical issue, as if the theory is going to fix things. The body will heal itself. Yeah, that's great. Anybody else like to share over here? Yes. Uh-huh. You found the breathing more challenging when you're sitting compared to standing. Yeah, that's quite common. And so one of the ways in which we might address that is to get us a little bit high, to get your butt a little bit higher. Of course, we're limited here with the materials, but you would want your butt a little bit higher than the knees so that the breath can drop down into the knees. Of course, that whole dropping is tough when your knees are a little bit higher than the pelvis. Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome. Yes. Yes. So you felt with the second sitting, you felt an expansion of your awareness into the environment, and in particular into the trees and the other things living around you. Yeah. Yeah, that's quite spot on. And this is one reason why the sitting is with eyes open. Because when the eyes close, I mean, this is a very valuable meditation when you close your eyes and it's very introspective. You're doing maybe some sort of psychological analysis, possibly seeing the arising of craving. This is a common Buddhist meditation. But here the eyes are open because you want the senses to really open out and feel that the external world is not an imposing presence, but a very life-giving presence. You know, trees are very much sitting with us. And you feel, especially some of these trees or this cactus over here, they exhibit this same dropping and lift. And we can use that energy and absorb that energy into us. Any final comments or questions? Yes. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, that's so the comment was when we're practicing the sitting or if we're Tai Chi, we typically don't give so much attention to the intricacies of where the pelvis is and the sacrum and dropping it and whatnot. Am I getting you right? Mm-hmm. Yes. So if we give more attention to this in these basic practices, particularly at the beginning, then you can feel this interplay of substantial and insubstantial, filling and emptying. Yeah, that's quite right. Some of the movements we actually didn't. I didn't show you any of the Tai Chi movements, but which was okay for me, um, because we are just doing so much with the breathing. But you're quite right. So I'll just show one movement of this practice, just to show it. Of course, we won't have time to go into it, but it very much rides on the posture and the breath and the intricacies of this tilt, of this little tuck. If this tuck is not there, then you're losing. You know, the practice can still be useful, but it's not nearly as useful. And I think, from my perspective, uh, this is how Zen and this form of Hatha breathing can add something to Tai Chi. But the Tai Chi also just gets the energy moving so well, and that's what makes it so useful for the breathing. So let's say my tail is tucked, and I'm doing the first movement, which is here. I'm sorry, so my tail was not tucked there. My butt is sticking out a little bit. And now this is with the tail tucked. Can you see the difference? And not just see, can you feel the difference in your own body? Yeah. And certainly for me, I mean, this is, now I really feel like, me and that tree over there, we're getting each other. Whereas here, I don't feel connected to that tree. I feel like that tree is kind of laughing at me like, oh, you silly human, you still haven't figured it out. You do all this movement. It's so simple. Yeah, thank you. But I don't want to take up too much more time. I know you're on a schedule, but we've probably gone over a little bit. But I'm here to stick around if you have more questions and comments. I teach a Tai Chi class online on Tuesdays from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. Anyone who's welcome to join. We also do a Zazen sitting before and after. You're welcome to join for that, although we should probably talk about just the protocol for that. But these things are open to the community that I'm involved with. And yeah, I'm really grateful, Bob. Thank you for the invitation. And thanks for your attention. And I really enjoyed this. So thank you very much. Oh.